I never thought I'd be the guy writing something like this, but here I am. My name's Mike, and I've been with my wife, Lisa, for about 5 years now. We got engaged last year, and everything seemed perfect, or at least that's what I convinced myself of. She's smart, funny, ambitious, and honestly, I thought we were soulmates. We had plans for a big wedding, a honeymoon, the usual happy ending. But in the weeks leading up to the trip, I started noticing little things that didn't sit right. It started with small stuff. She'd be on her phone a lot more than usual, always hiding the screen when I looked over. She'd cancel plans last minute, saying she was too busy at work or just exhausted. I figured maybe she was stressed. She's a high-powered executive after all. But there was this odd, almost defensive edge to her tone whenever I pressed her about what she was doing after hours. She'd snap back, "It's just work, Mike. You worry too much." That should have tipped me off, right? But I brushed it aside, convinced that she loved me and that maybe I was just being paranoid. Then, about a week before the wedding, I found her phone lying face down on the nightstand, with a dozen texts from someone named Mark. I didn't recognize the number, but the messages were intimate, flirty, suggestive, talking about meeting up for a quick drink after work. I felt my stomach turn. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I couldn't ignore it either. I kept quiet, thinking maybe I'd confront her after the wedding when things were calmer. But as the days went on, I started noticing more. Her phone kept lighting up late at night, always with the same name. She was sneaking out of the bedroom at odd hours, saying she was taking a call or needed some quiet time. I'd catch her in small lies about where she'd been or who she was talking to. Her stories were inconsistent, and the way she'd avoid my eyes, like she was hiding something, was killing me inside. Still, I thought maybe I was overreacting. Maybe she was just stressed, or maybe it was a harmless flirtation that would cool off after the wedding. Then came the night everything changed forever. I was lying in bed, trying to sleep, when I heard her on the phone. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but the words floated through the door clear as day. I recognized her voice immediately, sweet, teasing, and a little desperate. She was talking to someone I hadn't heard before, but the tone, it was unmistakably intimate. She was whispering, giggling, and I caught snippets of her saying things like, "Can't wait to see you again," and "You're so good at hiding this from everyone." My blood ran cold. I froze there, listening as she kept talking, about when she'd be free, what she wanted to do, and how she'd make it worth his while. I didn't need to hear more. My stomach sank and my mind spun. I already knew what I'd find if I looked through her phone, but hearing her say those things, that was the final nail. I waited until she hung up, then quietly slipped out of bed and grabbed her phone from the dresser. The screen was unlocked. She'd never bothered to lock it, and I'd never thought I'd do this, but I was desperate. I scrolled through her messages and found a string of texts with Mark. They were explicit, full of plans to meet tonight, to have sex, to keep their affair a secret. She'd been lying to me for months about where she was, what she was doing, and even about her feelings for me. It hit me like a punch to the gut. All the times she told me she loved me, all the nights she spent pretending to be faithful, she'd been cheating on me with her boss the entire time. I felt numb, angry, betrayed. How could she do this? How could she lie so easily, so convincingly? My mind raced with questions, but mostly I couldn't believe I had missed all of this, that I'd almost married her while she was sneaking around behind my back. That's when I knew I had to confront her, but I wasn't prepared for what was coming next. I waited until morning, but I couldn't sleep. The images kept flashing through my head, her laughing on the phone, the texts she'd sent, the way she'd looked me in the eye and lied about everything. I felt a mix of rage and heartbreak, like my world had crumbled overnight. I knew I had to face her, but I didn't want to just accuse her without some proof in her face. So I decided I'd catch her in the act, maybe get her to admit it herself. I planned to confront her that evening, but the moment I saw her face, everything changed. She came home from work early, looking tense and a little on edge. She was trying to act normal, but her eyes darted around, avoiding mine. I kept my cool, pretending everything was fine. I asked her how her day was. She shrugged, gave me a quick, fake smile, and said she needed to talk. My stomach twisted. I knew this was it. I told her I had something to say too, and she looked nervous, maybe even scared. That's when I pulled out her phone just as a test. I told her I'd seen enough and I knew about her affair. She froze, then scoffed, rolling her eyes. She threw her head back and said, "Oh, please, Mike, you're overreacting. That's all just a stupid joke, or maybe you misunderstood. It's nothing serious. Mark's just a friend and we're not doing anything. Just talking, like people do." She dismissed it like it was nothing, like I was crazy even bringing it up, but I knew better. I'd seen the messages. I'd heard her voice. There was no denying it now. I couldn't stay silent anymore. I told her I'd caught her, that I knew about her lies, her sneaking around, the texts, everything. Her face twisted and she started yelling. "You're paranoid, Mike. You're making a big deal out of nothing. It's not like I cheated, just some stupid texts. You're blowing this way out of proportion. I don't know what you want from me. I've been stressed, okay? Work is crazy and I needed some excitement. It doesn't mean I don't love you." Her words hit me like a slap. She was actually trying to justify it, like I should just accept her betrayal because she was stressed. I was furious. How could she be so bitchy about this? How could she lie to my face? I remember feeling my fists tighten, my jaw clenched so hard I thought I'd break my teeth. The betrayal was one thing, but the way she dismissed it, like I was the problem, made me see red. I told her I was done, that I couldn't be with someone who lied to me for months, who was sneaking around behind my back. She looked at me with that same bitchy, disbelieving expression, like I was the crazy one for catching her. She yelled that I was overreacting, that I was being paranoid, and that I was ruining everything over nothing. That's when I knew I couldn't stay, not after that. That night, I went to sleep with a heavy heart, feeling crushed and furious all at once. I didn't want to believe it was true, but the evidence was clear. I kept asking myself how I could have missed all this, how long she'd been lying and how much more she'd hidden. I kept replaying her voice on the phone, the explicit texts, her dismissive attitude. It was like I'd woken up in a nightmare. The person I trusted most in the world, my wife, had been cheating on me with her boss, and I hadn't even known for sure until I overheard her on the phone. That was the moment I realized I was in a world of trouble, and I didn't even know how to fix it. After that confrontation, everything changed. I couldn't look at Lisa the same way. Her face, her words, everything was tainted by that betrayal. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut, but at the same time I was furious. How could she just lie to my face, dismiss everything, and make me feel like I was overreacting? I knew I needed to think carefully about what to do next, but the anger and hurt were too raw to ignore. I spent the next couple of days obsessively going over everything. I kept reading through her texts, trying to understand how long this had been going on. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs. How could I have been so blind? Was I really that bad at noticing? Or was she just that good at hiding it? The more I thought, the more I realized this wasn't going to be something I could just brush off. I needed a plan. I needed to decide whether I'd try to fix this or if I was done. The thing that hit me hardest was how she kept insisting it was nothing, just some stupid flirtation, nothing serious. But I knew better. I saw the way she talked to Mark, the way she giggled on the phone. I knew she'd been lying to me, hiding things for months. And the worst part, I'd been so blind that I'd almost married her without knowing the truth. That night, I sat in my apartment alone, staring at her texts on my phone, feeling a mixture of disgust, heartbreak, and betrayal. I told myself I deserved better than this, but part of me still loved her, even after all that. I wondered if I could forgive her, or if I even wanted to. I knew I couldn't just confront her again and hope she'd change. No, I needed to be clever. I needed to catch her in a lie she couldn't dismiss. That's when I decided I'd set a trap. I'd make her think I wasn't suspicious, but I'd be watching her closely. I wanted to see if she'd slip up again, if she'd do something stupid or reckless. The plan was simple. I'd pretend everything was normal, but I'd keep tabs on her, follow her, and see if I could find more proof. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me anymore. I was done being blind, done being the nice guy who gets betrayed and says nothing. The day I started executing my plan was when things really started to spiral. I set up a few little things, like hiding my phone to see if she'd pick it up or leave her laptop open in a way that I could sneak a look. I even left a few messages just to see if she'd react. Nothing explicit, just enough to catch her off guard. I wanted her to slip up. I wanted her to prove she was still lying. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was fighting back, And honestly, it felt good, evil maybe, but good. Because I refused to be the fool anymore and I was determined to find out everything she'd been hiding. Meanwhile, Lisa kept acting like everything was fine, but I saw the cracks in her facade. She was tense, always on edge, snapping at me over little things. I could tell she was worried I was onto her, even if she'd never admit it. That made me feel a little less crazy. She thought she was slick, but I was catching her in little lies, small signs she was nervous about being caught again. That's when I realized she was starting to crack, and I was just waiting for her to slip up completely. It was a roller coaster of emotions, anger, sadness, a strange sense of victory, even if it was just in my head. I kept telling myself that I deserved honesty, respect, and loyalty. If she couldn't give me that, then I had to decide what was more important, staying with her while she continued to cheat or walking away and starting fresh. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to be the fool anymore. Not after everything I'd seen, heard, and felt. I was determined to find out just how deep her lies went, and I was getting close. The truth was out there, and I was going to find it. The days that followed were a constant battle between my head and my heart. I kept the facade of normalcy, but inside I was anything but. Every time Lisa left the house, I'd silently follow her, not in a creepy way, just enough to see where she went. I needed to catch her red-handed, or at least get more proof. I started noticing patterns. She'd leave around the same time most evenings, always with her phone glued to her hand. I'd hide in the shadows, watching her meet someone, or sometimes just go to a bar alone, pretending it was work stress or some bullshit excuse she kept spinning. One night, I followed her to a fancy hotel downtown. She slipped inside, and I watched her go up the stairs with a man I didn't recognize, but I could tell from the way she was acting, giggling, touching his arm, that it was more than just a business meeting. I felt like I was suffocating. Every fiber of my being wanted to storm in there, rip her apart, drag her out, and scream at her for what she'd done. But I played it cool, took some photos with my phone, and kept my distance. I wasn't ready to confront her face to face yet, not until I knew everything. The next day, I dug even deeper. I hacked her email accounts. Yeah, I know, bad move, but I was desperate. I found more messages, more plans. She was supposed to meet him again that very night at a different place. She'd been lying to me about her whereabouts for months, and I felt like I was losing my mind. How could I have been so naive? I thought about all the times she said she loved me, how she'd cry about missing me when I was working late. All lies, every single one. Tensions between us grew thick. I didn't want to accuse her outright anymore, not until I had everything nailed down. But I couldn't pretend I didn't see her sneaking around or hear the way she avoided my questions. One afternoon, I finally sat her down and told her I knew everything. I showed her the photos I'd taken, the texts I'd uncovered, the times I followed her, her reaction. She got defensive right away, throwing her head back and rolling her eyes. "Oh, stop it, Mike. You're being paranoid. You're just insecure. Maybe I met someone for a drink, or maybe I was just talking with a friend. You're overreacting like always," she snapped. Her tone was bitchy, dismissive, and I could see the contempt in her eyes. She refused to accept any responsibility, instead painting herself as the victim of my trust issues. I was seething. Every ounce of respect I had for her evaporated in that moment. I told her I was done with her bullshit, that I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. That's when she started throwing accusations back at me, saying I was crazy, jealous, insecure. She said I was overreacting again, like she couldn't comprehend how much she was hurting me. I felt like I was about to explode. I wanted to shake her, scream at her to admit what she'd done. But I held back. I knew I had to be smart. I told her I needed some space, that I was done trusting her for now. She scoffed and told me I was ruining everything, that I was overreacting. That was the moment I realized she was never going to take responsibility, never going to admit the truth. I left the house that day feeling hollow, like I'd been punched in the chest. I didn't know whether to cry, scream, or just walk away. Everything I'd built with her, my trust, my love, had been shattered. I don't even remember how I got through the rest of the day. All I knew was that I couldn't keep pretending she was innocent. She was out there lying, cheating, sneaking around with her boss, Mark, and I was just supposed to accept it. Not a chance. The only thing left was deciding what to do next, but one thing was clear. I'd lost the girl I thought was my everything, and I was angry as hell about it. After that confrontation, I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. My mind was racing, trying to decide whether I should walk away or fight for something I knew was already broken beyond repair. I was hurting, furious, and exhausted all at once. For days, I stayed silent, trying to process what I'd uncovered, but the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. There was no fixing this. Lisa had made her choice, and it was clear she didn't give a damn about me anymore. I spent nights lying awake, obsessing over every detail. I kept going through her phone, rereading those texts, listening to that voice on the phone, trying to make sense of how I'd been so blind. I'd trusted her with all my heart, and she'd thrown it away like it was nothing. I wondered if I could ever forgive her, or if I even wanted to. Honestly, part of me wanted revenge. I wanted her to feel what I felt, to see how much she'd hurt me. I couldn't just let her walk out and pretend it was all okay. One night I decided I'd had enough. I called her from an unknown number just to see if she'd pick up. She did, and her voice was full of attitude, bitchy as usual. I told her I knew everything, that I'd seen her with Mark and that I had proof. She laughed, a bitter, dismissive laugh, and said, "Oh, please, you're just jealous, Mike. You think I'm supposed to sit around and wait for you to grow a backbone. Honestly, I don't even care anymore. I've moved on, so should you." Her words were like ice, cold and cutting. That's when I decided I'd make her regret every lie, every betrayal. The plan was simple. I wanted her to know I wasn't going to be the fool she thought I was. I started by sending her an anonymous message with some of the photos I'd taken, just enough to make her panic. I knew she'd get paranoid, start asking questions, or maybe even try to cover her tracks. I also reached out to Mark, leaving a few messages telling him I knew about his little affair with Lisa. I wanted her to feel trapped, cornered, like her cover was blown. I wasn't planning to expose her publicly yet, but I wanted her to understand that I was no longer playing by her rules. Meanwhile, she kept acting like she was the victim, throwing tantrums, calling me crazy, accusing me of stalking her. But I could see the fear creeping into her eyes. She knew I wasn't going to let this slide. I saw her trying to cover her tracks, deleting messages, pretending everything was fine. But I had already downloaded everything. I'd be ready when I needed to show her just how badly she'd messed up. For the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of control, even if it was just a small victory in a war I never wanted to fight. The emotional toll was brutal. I kept asking myself how I'd gotten here, how I'd trusted someone so deeply and been so betrayed. I went from feeling like I was on top of the world to feeling like I'd hit rock bottom. She was a bitch about everything, lying, dismissing, trying to gaslight me into thinking I was the crazy one. But I knew the truth. She was the one who'd been unfaithful, not me. And I was done making excuses for her. I knew I had to decide if I was going to confront her again or just cut her loose and walk away for good. Honestly, I didn't know what the future held. All I could do was keep my eyes open, stay one step ahead, and prepare for whatever came next. Whether she realized it or not, she'd pushed me to the edge, and I wasn't going to let her keep tearing me apart. I'd spent too long loving her, trusting her, only to find out she'd been lying right to my face. That betrayal cut deeper than anything I've ever felt, and I knew there was no going back. The question now was how much more pain I could take before I finally decided to walk away, or fight back harder than I ever thought I could. In the end, I reached a point where I knew I had to make a choice. The evidence was stacked against her, and I'd already mentally prepared myself for the worst. I sat her down one last time, feeling like I was on the edge of some kind of breaking point. Her bitchy attitude was still there, but beneath it I saw the cracks widen: fear, guilt, maybe even regret. I told her I knew everything about Mark, the texts, the nights she lied to me, the whole damn deception. I looked her in the eyes and told her I couldn't keep pretending, that I was done being the fool. She tried to spin it as always. Said she made a mistake, that she was just bored, that she still loved me but needed something more. Her voice was sharp and dismissive, like she didn't even care if I believed her, but I just shook my head. I'd had enough of her lies. I told her I was leaving permanently this time. I didn't want to hear her excuses, her tears, her bullshit. I'd been betrayed so many times that I'd lost count, and I knew I couldn't stay in a marriage built on lies. She went full bitch mode, telling me I was overreacting, that I was crazy, that I'd ruin everything over some stupid texts. But honestly, I didn't care anymore. I'd made up my mind. I packed my bags, walked out that door, and left her standing there, still trying to spin her lies. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but in that moment I knew it was the right thing. Since then, it's been a roller coaster. I've cried, I've yelled, I've questioned everything about myself, how I missed the signs, how I let her get away with it for so long. But I've also felt a strange sense of relief. I finally took control. I finally faced the truth, and I walked away from a relationship that was nothing but lies and betrayal. I realized I deserve better than someone who cheats, lies, and dismisses my feelings like they're nothing. Looking back, I've learned some painful lessons. Trust is fragile, and once broken, it's nearly impossible to repair, at least for me. I also learned that sometimes love isn't enough. If someone doesn't value you enough to be honest, then they don't deserve you. And most importantly, I learned that I have to prioritize my own happiness and well-being, even if it means walking away from someone I once loved deeply. So, here's my advice to anyone going through something similar. Don't ignore the signs, no matter how much you want to believe in fairy tales. When the trust is gone, everything else crumbles. Confront the truth, no matter how brutal it is. And if you find yourself betrayed, don't be afraid to walk away, even if it hurts like hell. Because in the end, living a lie is worse than facing the pain of losing someone. Sometimes, the biggest act of self-love is having the strength to say enough is enough.